She was arrested. The truth had finally come out. The evidence was damning. Clear footage from the CCTV showed Mila slipping something into Nathan's drink and later spinning a fabricated story that he had raped her. But Nathan and Zara had sensed something was off long before that. They'd seen the warning signs, heard the sly jabs, felt the tension building like a storm. Mila's twisted attempts to drive a wedge between them hadn't gone unnoticed. So instead of confronting her directly, they laid a quiet trap. A small camera, cleverly placed, silently recorded everything. In the police station's cold, echoing cell, Mila sat hunched on the floor, mascara smeared, hair a tangled mess, sobbing into her hands. The reality of her downfall hit her like a freight train. No more smug lies. No more manipulative games. Just cold steel bars and regret. Her cries weren't just of sorrow, they were of humiliation. She had tried to destroy someone's life, and it had backfired spectacularly. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Zara sat quietly in the living room, her expression unreadable. She stared blankly at the phone she had just dropped onto the table after hearing the news. "She hasn't changed," Zara muttered, her voice brittle. "None of them have. Same games, same poison. Just better packaging this time." Nathan stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her protectively. "Let them try," he whispered against her hair. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever tricks they bring, we'll deal with it. Together." Zara leaned into him, her body tense with hurt and rage. "Imagine, Nathan," she said with a sad, sarcastic laugh. "They actually thought we'd be stupid enough to fall for it, that I'd believe she was the victim after everything. They're stuck in the past, thinking I'm still that naive little girl desperate for approval." Nathan pulled her closer. "You're not," he said firmly. "You're stronger than all of them, and now, finally, the world sees her for what she truly is." Zara closed her eyes, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Her heart ached, not just from betrayal, but from the painful confirmation that her family's darkness hadn't changed, and maybe never would. But one thing was clear: she wasn't alone anymore. In a frantic rush, Mr. and Mrs. Daramola sped through the rain-slicked streets, their hearts pounding with dread. News had just reached them that their daughter, Mila, had been arrested, caught in the act of drugging Nathan and falsely accusing him of rape. The shame was overwhelming, but their instinct to protect her overruled every other emotion. They had no idea just how unforgiving fate was about to be. As their car swerved around a bend, tires struggling for grip on the wet asphalt, disaster struck. The vehicle veered out of control and slammed violently into a tree. The force of the impact crushed the front of the car like paper. Mr. Daramola didn't even have time to scream. Death took him instantly, the wreckage claiming his body in a brutal final blow. Beside him, Mrs. Daramola was barely alive, her bloodied face barely recognizable, her limbs shattered, her mind teetering on the edge of darkness. Back at the police station, Mila sat curled in a corner of her cold cell, rocking back and forth, her mascara streaked down her cheeks, muttering to herself. Reality was slowly crashing in. She had tried to rip apart a marriage out of jealousy and delusion, but instead, her own world had detonated. The plan had backfired catastrophically, and then came the gut-wrenching news. Her father, gone. Her mother, paralyzed, unresponsive, stripped of every memory, every ability to care for herself. A once vibrant, strong woman now reduced to a breathing body with no recollection of who Mila was. No words, no movement, just empty stares and a mind erased by trauma. Zara stood quietly in the hospital corridor, watching Mila crumble in the waiting room. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between pity and justice. Nathan stood beside her, one arm around her waist, the other holding her hand. "She wanted to break us," Zara said bitterly, her voice low. "And now, look who's shattered." Nathan said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The truth had prevailed, but the aftermath was a storm of its own. Joseph, after much hesitation, eventually signed off on Mila's bail. He saw no remorse, but he saw something else. Consequences. Cruel, life-altering consequences. Mila was allowed to leave the police station not because she was innocent, but because now she was the only one left to care for her mother. Now Mila sat beside her mother's hospital bed, a haunting stillness in the room. Machines beeped in rhythm, her mother's eyes blinked slowly at the ceiling, recognizing no one. Mila reached for her hand, but there was no grip in return. No warmth, just the ghost of a life that once was. And all she could do was cry, not for the lies she told, but for the price she never expected to pay. Mila was unraveling, bit by bit, breath by breath. Every morning she woke up hoping for a miracle, only to be greeted by the same crushing reality. Her mother, barely clinging to sanity, had started screaming incoherently, thrashing in her bed when the hallucinations took over. Doctors said it was psychological trauma made worse by lack of proper treatment. The bills kept piling, suffocating Mila like a slow, relentless tide. She had already sold everything, her jewelry, the family lands, even her father's cherished car. Nothing brought in enough. It was like trying to fill a bottomless pit with a spoon. Every hospital visit was a nightmare. The doctors kept giving her warnings, urgent ones. If something isn't done soon, your mother's condition will worsen beyond help. But how do you buy time when you're drowning in debt? One chaotic afternoon in the hospital, Mrs. Daramola's mind began to spiral beyond control. Nurses had grown used to her screams, to the wild look in her eyes, to the endless mumblings that made no sense. But today was different. Her breathing became ragged. Her fingers clutched the bedsheets like they were her last hope. And then, without warning, her body gave out, collapsing into stillness, her eyes rolling back as alarms blared across the room. She was gone, but not dead. Not yet. Somewhere between this world and the next, she was floating in darkness. And then came the light, soft, almost mocking, and a figure standing in it. Zara. There she was, not as a woman seeking revenge, but as a quiet, younger version of herself. The little girl who used to follow her around the house, eyes wide with hope, desperate for her mother's approval. The same girl Mrs. Daramola had shoved aside, ignored, criticized at every turn. Why? Because she wasn't hers. Because she was adopted. Because some twisted corner of her soul had refused to open the door to love. Zara stepped forward, expression calm but haunting. I washed your clothes. I memorized your favorite meals. I begged for your attention, she said softly. And still, you hated me. Mrs. Daramola's voice caught in her throat. She wanted to deny it, scream that it wasn't true, but the memories came like a flood. Slamming doors, cold glares. The time she yanked Zara's plate away at dinner and gave it to Mila instead. The times she scolded her for speaking, for breathing too loudly, for existing. Zara looked down at her, a sad smile touching her lips. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. I just wanted to belong. And just like that, the illusion around her shattered. 1,000 versions of Zara stood around her, each one at a different age, a different moment of rejection. Mrs. Daramola fell to her knees, shaking, weeping. I didn't know, I didn't see it, she gasped. Oh, you saw. The voices echoed back, cold and sarcastic. You just didn't care. She begged. Oh, how she begged in that space between time. Please, please give me another chance. I was blind, I was cruel, I was everything a mother should never be. Let me go back. Let me tell her I'm sorry. But the vision offered no promises, only a bitter truth. Some damage couldn't be undone. Some forgiveness had to be earned, not asked for in desperation. Back in the real world, Mrs. Daramola jerked awake on the hospital bed, gasping as if pulled from drowning, her body still broken, her mind still fragile, but her soul shattered in a way no medicine could heal. Now, each time Zara's name was mentioned, a quiet tear slid down her cheek. Her lips moved to say her name, but no voice came. Only the memory of the girl she had thrown away, and the weight of knowing she never deserved the love that was so freely offered. Was life mocking her? Was this some twisted way of the universe repaying her cruelty, stripping her bare piece by piece until she was left with nothing but the same emptiness she had once wished on Zara? The thought haunted Mila like a whisper in the dark. It was ironic, wasn't it, that she now stood on the edge of the same cliff she had once pushed her adopted sister toward. Only this time, there was no one to catch her. No comforting arms, no forgiveness. The consequences of her actions clung to her like a shadow. Every breath she took was heavy with guilt. Every second she spent watching her mother's condition worsen drove the dagger deeper. With nothing left to sell and debt threatening to consume her entire existence, Mila made a decision that felt like peeling off her own skin. She sold the house. The mansion, her father's legacy, her mother's pride, the symbol of everything they had ever flaunted, was gone. The sprawling home that once hosted lavish parties, echoed with arrogant laughter, and towered over others with its polished gates, was no longer theirs. She had signed it away with shaking hands, the pen digging into her fingers as if even it resented her for letting go. Mrs. Daramola, frail and barely able to move, wept when she found out. Her lips trembled, her voice reduced to a whisper that cracked with each word. "Don't do it, Mila. Let me die here if I must, but don't give that house away. You don't know what you're throwing into the wind." But Mila had already done it. She didn't want to die in the shadows of her mistakes. She wasn't ready to be left with nothing. Not yet. And if losing the house meant keeping her mother alive a little longer, then so be it. Still, the decision gnawed at her. She ended up in a cramped two-bedroom flat on the edge of town. No chandeliers, no polished tiles, no sweeping staircase. Just a space with four walls, a flickering bulb, and a bed that creaked too loudly when she cried herself to sleep. It wasn't much, but it was something. A roof. A temporary sanctuary in the storm she had stirred with her own hands. She once looked down on people who lived like this. Now she was one of them. And every time she walked through the rusted gate of her new home, she couldn't help but think, maybe this is what I deserved all along. Nathan and Zara had heard the news. Everyone had. The once proud Daramola family had crumbled. First the scandal, then the accident, and now the slow public unravelling. The mansion was gone, sold in desperation. Mila, frantic and worn, was seen running from one bank to another trying to gather enough to keep her mother alive. Mrs. Daramola's condition had worsened, slipping from critical to hopeless, and yet Nathan and Zara said nothing. They didn't visit. They didn't reach out. They watched from a distance, quietly, but not out of malice. Zara had spent years longing for that woman's affection, her approval, even just her acknowledgement, and all she ever received in return was scorn. She had been the obedient one, the quiet one, the one who always tried to belong. Yet, no matter how much love she gave, she was always the outsider, always the adopted girl, never truly daughter. Now, as she watched the Daramola name unravel before her eyes, Zara felt nothing. No pride, no revenge. Just a hollow ache where love was supposed to have grown. And in that ache, she chose silence. She couldn't bring herself to offer sympathy, not even as Mila struggled beneath the weight of responsibility. After all, Mila had once tried to tear her life apart. And even now, Zara couldn't be sure if Mila's regret was real or just the result of consequences crashing down too hard. She didn't want to find herself back in that toxic circle. She had built peace with Nathan, built a life that no longer revolved around proving herself to people who never wanted to see her. Nathan never questioned her decision to stay away. He simply stood beside her, always calm, always present, and in his quiet support, Zara found strength. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Mrs. Daramola lay fading. Her body had suffered too much, her mind unravelling long before her organs began to fail. But in her final hours, clarity returned, sharp, painful, and cruel. As the machines beeped softly in rhythm with her shallow breaths, she whispered a name. Zara. It was not a name she had spoken with warmth in life, but now it was the one on her lips as the world slipped away. Her trembling hand reached out as if trying to hold on to the daughter she had never truly embraced. "I'm sorry," she murmured. The words barely formed. Her lips moved, but no one could truly hear them. Zara wasn't there. She never heard the apology her heart had waited for all those years. And it came in a room filled with silence and missed chances. Mila stood by, her mother's hand in hers, tears falling, knowing that this was it. And though she had fought so hard to save her, she realized something far more painful. Her mother had never made peace with the person she hurt the most. The final breath came quietly, and with it, a lifetime of unspoken regret was buried in that hospital bed. Far away in the small apartment she now called home, Zara paused for a moment. The air felt still, and somewhere deep inside, she just knew. Whatever words her mother had spoken had come too late. After the burial, there was nothing left for Mila in that town. The whispers followed her like a curse. Some pitied her, others judged, but none truly understood the weight she carried. With her mother gone, the mansion sold, and her name stained beyond repair, Mila quietly packed what little she had and disappeared. No farewell, no announcement, just a silent exit from a life that had collapsed around her. She moved to a smaller city where no one knew her name, where she could start over without the shadow of disgrace hanging over her. She took a job at a small pharmacy and kept to herself. There were no more schemes, no desperate chases for luxury, just survival. And maybe, somewhere in that silence, redemption. Back in the city, Zara stood at her window one morning, watching the world go by. Nathan brought her tea as he always did, and kissed her gently on the forehead. She smiled, but there was still something in her eyes. Not sadness exactly. More like release, the kind that comes when you finally decide to stop dragging the past behind you. She had tried so hard to be loved by the Daramolas. She had bent herself into 1,000 shapes, hoping they'd see her. But they never did. And that was the lesson life had forced into her hands. That your worth isn't something others grant. It's something you claim, protect, and carry for yourself. Forgiveness didn't come in one wave. It came slowly, in quiet reflections, in letting go of questions that would never be answered, in realizing that some apologies would never be heard, not because they weren't spoken, but because they were spoken too late. Zara didn't forgive for them. She forgave for herself, because she deserved peace. She deserved to walk forward without the weight of bitterness shackled to her ankles. As she turned from the window, Nathan wrapped his arms around her. "You're stronger than all of them," he whispered. "I know," she said softly, and this time she believed it. Life isn't always fair, but it's honest. It gives back exactly what you pour into it, eventually. And sometimes the cruelest truths come wrapped in the softest lessons. That love must be earned, that cruelty comes full circle, and that peace is never given. It's chosen. If you've been moved by this story, touched by Zara's quiet strength, and reminded that forgiveness isn't weakness but power, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's more where this came from. Stories that speak to the soul, that stir the heart, and remind us why we fight to be better. Until next time.